Hey guys, Thingfishy here with a full in-depth guide on how to parry Crucible Knights, including all the visual cues you need to parry them consistently. If this sounds good to you, I'll be making a whole lot more of these tutorials for other notable enemies and bosses in Elden Ring. So if you want to see these, be sure to hit that subscribe button before you go. Now I love Crucible Knights. To me, they're just like Black Knights from the Souls games. They're enemies that you never want to underestimate. They strike terror into the hearts of most new players. But if you've got your parrying down, running into one of them can eventually feel like a welcome opportunity to test out your skill, rather than the previous overwhelming dread of an inevitable "you died" screen. So like so many enemies in this game, they have two phases. It's the phase 1 attacks that you want to parry, and both phases include these attacks. So first up, we have the most common attack, the overhead swing. This is your bread and butter attack for this fight, and the parry timing is quite simple. You want to hit your parry input when his hand is at its highest point, just here. Next up, we have this backhand diagonal cut. For this one, you want to parry just as the hilt of his sword passes his helmet on the wind-up. Next up, we have this horizontal lunging backswing, and much like the other backswing attack, you want to hit parry just as his sword hilt passes his helmet on his wind-up. Now for this lunging stab attack. Much like the overhead swing, you want to parry here when his weapon is at the furthest point away from you. And finally, we have this dragging upswing attack. Now, I failed to parry this attack so many times that I started to think that it wasn't parryable. But it is. It's just quite hard to judge compared to his other attacks. This is where my input was for the successful parry. But because this attack does pretty big damage, there's no good visual indicator for the timing, and I only hit this a few times out of many attempts, and I'm fairly consistent with parrying. I wouldn't actually recommend trying to parry this one. Far better to dodge and just get out of the way. For any of you parry gods determined to do it though, my advice would be that the timing is just a tad later than you think it is. Now for some unparryable attacks. One of the most common are his various stomp attacks. Now, the best way of dealing with these is undoubtedly to jump them, but if you're an old school Souls player like me and your reflexes haven't fully embraced the jump button yet, don't worry, you can still roll through them. For his shield bash, you want to dodge as his shield is at its lowest point. Now interestingly, I found most of the time he'll follow this with his overhead swing, and if you're using a fast weapon, you can get a cheeky R1 attack in between these two moves. As you guys are starting to realise, I'm a big fan of keeping the damage up as much as possible while I'm parrying. So this little dodge R1 parry combo is a staple of mine when fighting these guys. Now for phase 2. So he always starts phase 2 with his flying attack. The key here is not to panic. While it looks scary, this is pretty easy to dodge. Hit your dodge at any point from when he starts flying towards you. And lastly, for the two tail attacks. The first tail attack is probably the hardest of all of his moves to dodge, because it seemingly comes out of nowhere and requires quite good reflexes to dodge correctly. Happily, it doesn't do that much damage. The one you do want to dodge is the one he sometimes follows this with. Another swing with far more range and far more damage. You want to hit roll just as it passes the 3 o'clock mark. And that's it, how to fight the Crucible Knight. Now, all of this takes practice and repetition, but with these strategies, I promise you'll begin to worry less about running into these guys. Thanks for watching. See you soon.